Hey guys, thanks for joining me again. It's our next Dinner with the Doc series, and I'm really excited. So tonight's topic is kind of about summertime issues, which kind of what I'm going to do is talk a lot about anhidrosis tonight, and then what I'm going to do is talk briefly about some other things that kind of pop up here in the summertime. Florida's kind of an interesting place because it does get so hot and humid and gross, and then we have a lot of other things that kind of pop up here with our subtropical climate. So that's what, we have a lot of cool things that happen here that are a lot different from other places. So we'll jump right in. So the big topic we're going to talk about tonight is anhidrosis, which most people have heard of anhidrosis. Kind of the big term for that is non-sweating. And what anhidrosis, the typical definition is a lack of normal sweating. So your horse can be an anhidrotic horse even if they're still sweating, but it's not the appropriate amount of sweat. And so sweating is really important to performance horses and horses in general because it's the way that they achieve thermoregulation. And so that scientists have determined that horses lose 60 to 75% of their body heat through sweating. And so if your horse is unable to sweat, it really can influence their performance. And so, like I said, kind of the normal term for that is a non-sweater. At this time, people don't really know what causes non-sweating. The kind of current theory is that it's caused by the stress hormones affecting the sweat glands. So basically, horses have a bunch of sweat glands all over them, and these sweat glands are really close to hair follicles. And so what can happen is as they get atrophy of the sweat glands, they don't produce enough sweat. And the really interesting thing is they actually have taken biopsies looking at sweat glands, and horses that are chronic non-sweaters, they actually have permanent damage to their sweat glands where they're permanently atrophied. So the thought is that over long periods of time, that when horses don't sweat, the sweat glands actually become permanently damaged. Horses that kind of acutely go to become a non-sweater, they don't have a lot of those changes. So that's where it's really important that we figure out a horse is a non-sweater, that we try to intervene quickly and make some adjustments and try to get them to improve their sweating. It used to be that people thought that non-sweating was caused by hypothyroidism. That doesn't tend to be true across, when you really study a bunch of horses. Some people say that there's a link of like color or age. That's really not found to be true when, researchers have researched, what kind of predisposes horses become non-sweaters. Interestingly, it doesn't matter where the horse is raised. So a horse raised in Florida, it's just likely to be an anhidrotic horse as a horse that's imported from another country or up north. And so, like I said, there's no identification of a breed, color, age, sex, or anything like that for it. And so, how we diagnose non-sweating horses is usually by just looking at them, we can tell. And most owners know it, but they'll recognize that their horse isn't sweating enough. I would say that most horse owners wait to call a horse that's not sweating until the horse completely stops sweating. Which the important thing is to try to identify it before that. And so it's very common for horses that are anhidrotic to actually partially sweat still, which can be really confusing for others. So, if the horse that maybe last year sweated a lot more but not sweating as much as it used to, or they may even have sweat in your location still. But I always tell people to always look at their other horses in the pasture and barn to see how they're sweating and kind of compare the herd. And then that can always give you an indicator of if they're sweating or not. A lot of times these horses also have a history of having a really poor performance, usually just in the summertime. If they have, owners will notice that they're just not performing like they usually do. And so the other thing is that, increased respiration rate, really high body temperatures, and that's the biggest risk of anhidrosis in horses is that we can actually have them go into hyperthermia or have a heat stroke. That they have a really hard time cooling down after exercise. Some people will start to notice that they'll start looking for places to be in shade. So all the other horses will be out maybe on the pasture somewhere eating grass, and then one horse will be standing alone under a tree. Sometimes horses will be in ponds. That's where it's getting try to cool down. And like I said, just increased performance in the summer. And then horses that are chronically anhidrotic, they start to have long-term changes. Their skin will get very dry and flaky. And there's also kind of a hallmark sign where they actually start to lose hair on their forehead. That's pretty commonly seen with anhidrotic horses. Like I said, they fatigue eat easily. And then people will start to notice that they have a decreased appetite or water consumption. So, like I said, diagnosis, a lot of times they make it by just looking at the horse. But kind of the gold standard, what they do in vet school, that sort of thing, is do a tribunal skin test. And so what you do is you go along the neck and you inject medication called tribunal. And so that's what is that decreasing amount of dilution as you go down the neck. So you put it in the neck, and that kind of lets you quantify where the horse is at with sweating. And so the other thing we can do, which we don't often do, is you can actually do a skin biopsy. And like I said, look at those skin glands, see what they're looking like. When I have horses that are not sweating, often what I do is I run full blood work, make sure there's not something kind of underlying there. And it's also really important to look at their electrolytes. Just because your sweat has, lots of electrolytes in it, sodium, potassium, chloride, and sort of things. So if your horse is not sweating, it's pretty easy for them to get an electrolyte. And so for management, kind of, the gold standard would be send them up north, and let them perform up north in the summertime. The really interesting thing is a lot of times horses that are not sweating down in Florida, if we send them up north, they actually start sweating up there. So that's where the current theory that they have a stress component, that comes into play. And so if you're unable, like most people, to just move your horse up to a cooler climate in the summertime, it's essential that you do a lot of management things to help them. So management is the big ones, allowing them access to lots of water sources, so clean, cool water for them to drink. Sometimes they talk about providing big water troughs so the horse can kind of get, a lot of times those horses will start to, paw in the water, kind of play in the water to cool themselves down. Sometimes ponds, which we'll talk about later in the presentation, when I'm not a big fan of ponds. And it's also important, with them that, you try to ride them at a time of the day when the temperature is a little bit lower. So evening or early morning, because we're not going to, risk hyperthermia as much. The other thing is try to limit their turnout times of the day where it's cooler, obviously. And if you can, keep them under fans during the hottest part of the day to kind of help them out. Also, I really recommend that these horses get electrolytes, like I talked about before, a little bit more prone to electrolyte imbalances. And with non-sweating, because it's very common down here, it goes on, it really affects horses. There's lots of anecdotal treatment for it. And there's no scientific research that says, this works for all horses with anhidrosis. A lot of it is, owners try it and they have some success with it. The common ones are dark beer, that people get that to their horses and have some success with it. Some thyroid supplementation, or other supplements like True Sweat, one is tasty. And like I said, those are mostly anecdotal that, when owners try it, they seem to have success with it, that sort of thing. But there's no, scientific proof facts that it actually works. And there's been numerous trials of different kinds of medications. And so far, it's kind of all, been the same thing. That it doesn't necessarily work for every, our practice uses a lot of acupuncture, and it works really well for these antibiotic horses. It helps them, if they stop sweating, regain sweating. And then if they're, still sweating, it helps increase that sweat production, all while decreasing some of that inflammation that we get. There's actually been research at UF where they showed that that acupuncture does help with antibiotic horses. The only thing is it's really important to keep that acupuncture because, but the other thing we'll do is we'll feed them an herb called Mujang Rusan that we give those horses. And ideally, like I said, it's a lot easier for these horses that are non-sweaters or anhydrotic, especially summer's past or something like that, to never let them get to the place where they completely shut down and they're not sweating anymore. It's a lot easier to, keep maintaining them, before the summer. So that's why a lot of times what we do, if we have a horse that we know that has a history of not sweating, is we'll actually start them on the herbals and acupuncture before they're really stressed, so that we can kind of maintain that over time. And so that's all that I have on anhidrosis tonight. It's really interesting and a cool topic, but the problem with it is, it's like, oh, they do it, but there's not a lot of scientific evidence of why they do it and that sort of thing. So that's what it's a cool thing, but it can be a little bit frustrating sometimes for owners to kind of manage and deal with. The next topic I'm going to talk about tonight is insect bite hypersensitivity. And so that's very commonly known as insect or bug bite allergy allergy, kind of feed itch is the other common one that we call it. And so basically what this is that horses have an allergic reaction to the saliva of insects. And so that can be any type of insect that bites, mosquitoes, barn flies, horse flies, those sorts of things. But by far the most common one is Tuberculosis, also known as a gnat or a nosebleed. And so that's a very common one down here that horses will, pop up with. A lot of times these horses, they start out, they'll get these big swelling or hives. They'll be really itchy, and so then they'll start to get self-trauma along their face, their neck, their chest, their belly. And so, like I said, for anhidrosis, a lot of times we can diagnose this just looking at the horse, and then time of year. A lot of times these horses start to pop up kind of in the spring, early summer, and then they really get full-blown, during the summer. We can do allergy testing for that, so that's where we pull a little bit of blood and do allergy testing. The problem with allergy testing for it is a lot of places that we use for the allergy testing, we actually test to the insect itself, not saliva. So even though your horse may be allergic to the saliva of the insect, they may not be allergic to the insect itself. So that's where it can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. And again, I always tell people with horses like this, the big thing is it tends to get worse year to year, like a lot of our allergic things that each year that they're exposed to get more of an allergic reaction. And the other big thing that's really important is management on your horses. And so all of management revolves around trying to avoid and repel insects from getting onto the horse. And so, like I said, the most common ones that we have a reaction to are actually gnats, and they are actually most active at dawn and dusk. So if you can avoid turnout times during that time, a lot of times that can help the horses do things like fly sheets with mosquitoes, flies, and sort of 60 amount of times that they're bitten. The other thing that you can do is keep a horse in the fan, because with the fan, with the airflow, it actually is enough to blow the gnat off the horse. So that's what during the times that gnats are really out and about, keeping the horse on their feet. And then it's really important to have good farm management, so that keeps your insect population down. And then basic things, taking manure out, not having your manure pile close to the barn, keeping things clean, dumping, clean water, those sorts of things. The treatment for these guys really revolves around breaking that itch cycle and that itchiness, because what we tend to see is when they actually have lots of self-trauma. We can do acupuncture and herbal medicine to help with the itch cycle and decrease the inflammation. The other thing I frequently do is insert them on a medicated shampoo, something with benzoyl peroxide in it, and that really can help with any kind of skin funk, kind of from tuning anything else. And I also use topical ointments and sprays that have things like steroids or a little bit of hydrocortisone or something in them to really stop that itch cycle so the horse feels more comfortable, so they're less likely to itch, and then also so we're preventing secondary skin infection. We can do allergy shots if we do know the horse is allergic to something. And there's actually very interesting research from where we get our immune therapy pythium from, that the pythium shot, that pythium immunotherapy that we use can help with fly-bite allergies. So that's kind of interesting. But like I always tell people, the biggest thing you can do with those horses with fly-bite allergies is management. And as a last resort, we can do steroids. So that's what we tend to start to try the other things before we jump to steroids. The next thing I'm going to talk about tonight is summer sores. And so summer sores, which pretty much everybody knows, what that is. The official name is the Haberdinitis. And so basically it forms, like most horse people know what bot flies are, but bot flies are, injected by the horse and they form in the stomach. So that's what means horses do that stomach also forms bot flies. But what can happen is if those bot flies, when they lay eggs, they're kind of in the wrong place, they don't get into the stomach, the larva will develop and they can crawl into any open wound that a horse has. And so what happens, like anything that has a larva infecting it, you get these big, nasty, non-healing skin regions and lots of foul flesh. For horses, these are really itchy, so what they tend to do is bite these wounds and cause lots of trauma that way. And usually they have this white, gritty, calcified white stuff in it. And like I said, this is something it won't work. Thanks for the thumbs up. So that's where it's really important. And a lot of them, what we actually have to do is do make such big crowd flush lesions that we actually have to go in there and debride and remove the lesions. A lot of times, what I'll do for these is I'll actually start them on. I'll make a topical ivermectin too, and mix it in with like ointment, and I'll put it on the wound itself so we're in the horse systemically and topically. And again, with these things, the key to prevention is doing things that you creatine on fly. So removing that manure, keeping feet stuff off the ground. Compost piles should be away from the barn. This sort of things, fly spray, all that. Yeah, and so the last thing I'm going to talk about tonight is Anhidrosis, which some people have heard about this. Kind of what happens is until you kind of deal with it, you don't really know it. It's not really on most people's radar. And so Anhidrosis is something called swamp cancer or summer leeches is a big thing that we call it. And so it occurs very commonly down here, kind of in this wet tropical environment. I think I read a paper that they said that 60% of cases of Anhidrosis occur in Florida. I think the remaining 40% are spread through like Alabama, Louisiana, eastern Texas, kind of really wet swampy areas. And so the weird thing about Anhidrosis is it's very similar to a fungus. They actually have some characteristics that are very similar to a fungus. And so what this means is that a lot of times when people start antifungals, they'll kind of respond a little bit, but they won't end up killing. And because that's what they have, some of those characteristics that are very close to fungus, but they don't actually have the components that antifungals use to hit or kill the fungus. And so that's why they don't tend to be as successful in using it. The other one that we're starting to see a lot down here that I would say is very similar to Anhidrosis is something called Lagunidium. That is very common to start seeing that too. We definitely started diagnosing that one. And so what happens, like I said, it's very common in tropical or subtropical climates, especially in areas that you have a long drought followed by wet weather, which down here, that's this time of year. And so basically, the PCM, which I always tell people to think of it like a water allergy, but it sits there, and when it rains and it gets wet, it moves. And so it likes to reside in standing water or moist soil. And so basically what happens is a horse has a very small cut, anywhere on its body, kind of the most typical place to see it on the legs, but we also see it on the sheath or on the face or something like that. But basically, they have kind of a break in that skin barrier. That's what something like it in there. I don't typically see it as much, like say the horse with a big wound, like a wound that needs stitches. I don't usually see that sticking and getting there. I don't know why, it has a preference for some of those wounds and not others. And basically what it does is it forms these large masses, and they're like they're tumor-like, and they're very ulcerated, and they're very angry looking. A lot of times they are itchy, because they have a lot of necrotic or dead, kind of skin cells on them, stuff like that. And a lot of times they have a really strong odor, and they just stink. And people are taking really good care of these things, trying to be aggressive and cleaning them and keeping them clean and dry, and they'll still just really stink and smell bad. And so when you go in there and you actually start dissecting through them and try to debride them, they'll actually have little drainage tracts in them. And in these tracts, they'll have something called punctures, which are these they kind of compare them to, they look a little bit like coral when you look at them under a microscope. But they're like this yellowish, gritty, gross stuff. So anyways, and like I said, that's kind of a hallmark of this disease. The nice thing I will say about PCM is that there hasn't been any documentation of where it's been transmitted between animals. So it's not contagious between animal and animal or animal to person. And so the really important thing for PCM is early identification and really the treatment success. And what they usually say with early identification is something within 2 weeks that we identify it. And the problem with it is what happens with it is the PCM tends to go deeper, and it's very invasive tissue. So it gets really important, like say on the lower leg, if it's over a joint, PCM will sometimes get deep enough where it will invade the joint and it'll invade the tendon sheath or something like that. And so the goal with PCM is not to let it get to that point that we're in the magnesium down here, and we're kind of the perfect storm for it. A lot of times, when you look at a wound, for me, a lot of times, I'm kind of going between ichthyosis versus sore. So a lot of times, what I'll do is when I see a wound that owner talks about that they're being very aggressive, they're trying to clean it, not healing, it's getting worse in the case of cleaning it or bandaging it. A lot of times, we'll have that talk about testing the horse. And so you can do it a couple ways. Kind of the common way now is to pull blood and do serum testing for it. And so there's a lab that we send it to, kind of went to a university, and that they test for it. The other thing we can do is biopsy, but the frustrating thing with pythium with biopsy is it doesn't always show up. Because what happens with the pythium is it causes so much local reaction. When you send in a spot, just a small fingerprint on biopsy of something, it will just show lots of granulation tissue, infections, product tissue, and you may not see some of those things that make you think that it's pythium. So a lot of times what we do is if it kind of looks like pythium and we do a blood test and it comes back positive for pythium, we find we still have to do treatment for pythium. And like I said, it's very, very common. And so kind of right now, the medication we have that kind of everybody recommends is doing the immunotherapy, which basically I think of it like a vaccine. And so kind of depending on whether the horse tested positive for pythium or lagomydium or both, we'll pick up, we'll pick an immunotherapy and we'll kind of do the treatment regimen associated with that. The products that we use, they do talk about in horses that kind of regularly get pythium. They do recommend treating them, kind of before the season starts, before they're kind of exposed to pythium to kind of increase their level. The other thing we'll a lot of times do, especially if there's some that you're concerned about, where the wound is, and could it be coming up, is it a bad location or is something that's been going on chronically? So a lot of times we'll do things that, to increase their immune system. So that'll be, XM shot, Wei Qi booster. We do a topical stab on it, and we'll do spray with a whole bunch of things to try to, help with that. And so, like I said, the hallmark treatment that we use is that immunotherapies plus something to boost their immune system, and then wound care. Sometimes we do have to go through on these things and debride them a little bit or remove it, and then cauterize. And that's just so it makes it more manageable. I have noticed in treating these things that the big thing that really helps them improve is fly management. So if we're able to keep them bandaged and wrapped and flies out of it, they do a lot better than one that can't bandage that has to be on a sheet or something like that. Those tend to take a lot longer. And with the immunotherapy, so I'll read that. So the immunotherapy, it helps with the T2 and T1 helper cells, which are immune response. 100% cure rate for acute cases less than 16 days, but less effective in chronic cases greater than 60 days. So that's why we try to identify it early and treat it severely and aggressively. The overall cure rate that they're saying for that immunotherapy is 75%. So anyway, pythium can be a really frustrating disease because it can be scary and people have had to put down horses because of pythium, depending on where it's located. But like I said, identifying it early is really key down here. Identifying it early and treating it aggressively. So those are the big things that happen in the summertime. As always, if you guys have any questions, you can put them here or contact us. And like always, there'll be some supplemental resources that you guys can see on our website, like blogs and stuff like that. So thanks for watching, and then have a good night.